and made mightier without roids.
So, after last week's video, we had a special request. As you can see, one of our commenters asked for me to cover the Overwatch cinematics. And in a day and time when everyone is playing the same game pretty much 24/7 and it's all the internet is made up of, I figured, what the heck, if you can't beat them, might as well join them. Plus, it helps that I already watched the cinematics, and honestly, I think they're pretty cool. So I figured we'd go through, talk about the different cinematics, and talk about what they add to the story, what they create that was lacking before in Overwatch's limited gameplay experience. Now, I won't even lie for a second. Overwatch had been so overhyped for me that by the time the white-hot crap storm that was Tracer's Buttgate emerged, no, I was just so done with Overwatch. And then people started coming out and saying that her butt was awful and that it was overly prominent. And then I was like, well, I mean, it is pretty dang prominent. And then the crap storm hit the other side where people were saying it couldn't be overly prominent because guys just like the booty and the game designers and back and forth, and I was just done. But then, well, things got kind of turned around on me. As they covered in the awesome Extra Credits channel videos on this subject, it was turned around because Tracer's butt pose was changed because it was out of character for her. And they instead replaced it with a still sexualized pose for her, but one rooted in Tracer's origins and pinup photography that adorns planes because she's a fighter pilot. A lot cooler. It's just a lot more of a heroic stance that I think fits her character really nicely. And that got me sort of intrigued, because normally people don't care about representing characters well in these sorts of games. They just want them to look good. It was nice to see a developer, especially one like Blizzard, really care about their depth of characters in a world such as Overwatch. So let's talk about each of the cinematic experiences one at a time. At the time this video goes up, there are 5. Hope a 6th one doesn't come out while this is in the editing process. So let's go to the first one. The first one is the Overwatch cinematic trailer, in which it's a 2v2 battle for Doomfist's Gauntlet, and it is Winston and Tracer versus Reaper and Widowmaker. This is where the iconic line comes from.
You know, the world could always use more heroes.
And my god, it's just so sweet. There's all these little moments where you get these wonderfully fleshed out candies of character development. Like when the first thing Winston does when he lands is he looks for civilians, and then he hops between them and the bullets. And then he has to kind of reassure them that everything is going to be okay, because he's a defender. More than anything, he cares about the populace. Same thing with Tracer. She goes over the wall and she sees that her quantum destabilizer device thing is on the fritz and it's out of juice, and she's worried, and you see her scared, but then she sees that there's kids there and she has to say something bright. She has to tell them that everything's going to be all right. In that same thing, you see the coin kind of flipped a little bit. You see Tracer enjoying battle a lot as she dives in, laughing and mocking people, and giddy as she assaults Widowmaker. And when Reaper takes it one step too far and crushes Winston's glasses, he goes ape, as it were. And that kind of sets in your mind that those glasses are important to Winston. I mean, sure, all of us geeky types gotta have our glasses, and glasses aren't cheap, and if you crushed mine, I'd be pretty pissed. But Winston seems especially mad, even for a gorilla. And when they get to his short, they flesh that out even further. It's also a fantastic bit of establishment in here, rooting the characters in emotion, in what they make you feel rather than just how cool they are. And if you are one of those people that's just rooted in the cool, you're probably just going to root for the bad guys anyway. And this cinematic does a great job of showing you how cool the bad guys are. So, I mean, I guess it accomplishes both. Showing you the defendery type who loves science and people and being a little bit goofier and having a bit more fun than everybody else, and the try-hard edgelord types that all the teenage guys love. Next, we move on to Recall. This is Winston's short, and in this one, Reaper assaults Winston by sneaking into his headquarters and trying to steal the Overwatch database. But it sets up a lot of great, crucial plot points about the world. Overwatch activity is vigilante activity, which means our Overwatch heroes are underdogs. Our heroes start at a disadvantage, hated by the government and with their arms forced behind their back, sort of like Civil War, or most of the superhero stories these days do this, where the government is saying, don't you do it, and they do it anyway because they're heroes and it's what they do. They also establish that the bad guys are kind of generic evil types who have some evil mustache-twirling machinations that must be stopped. Otherwise, they wouldn't need the Overwatch database, and Reaper wouldn't be seeking to just murder a scientist who had nothing better to do tonight than build a shield generator and eat peanut butter bananas. So, yeah, it establishes that well, but it also tells Winston's story, and there's a little elements here that make me curious. The scientist that gives Winston his glasses, which is why those glasses were so important in the first short, his name is Winston. His last name is Winston, and he put it in all caps because they want you to notice. His name is Winston. Did he pass it on? Is Winston just sort of claiming his name? What happened to the scientist? Was Winston born on the moon, or was he put up there? And man, there's just so much I'm curious about after this short. In the end, Reaper gets the crap kicked out of him, and Overwatch is saved and recalled. And then we see Winston and Tracer locking up again, just like bros always should. You can also, in a nifty twist, during this short near the beginning, when they show all the people standing in Winston's photograph, you can actually see the man who would be Reaper on the far left over here. Yeah, that's him. Hey, Reaper. Let's move on to Alive, because after that one, the next one is Widowmaker's whole short, in which they further flesh out the world by showing us the Omnics, and Omnics fighting for equality. Now, in the very first opening cinematic, I didn't really touch on this much, but I will now, they talk about how humanity was on the brink of collapse, and this is because of the Omnic crisis, in which Omnics kind of warred against humanity, Omnics being a sort of sentient super robot. And they were repelled by Overwatch, back when Overwatch was still a force for good. And now the Omnics are kind of fighting for equality, so that they can be people just like everybody else. And in this one, we see an Omnic leader, a holy man of sorts, who preaches that all are one within the iris, being assassinated by a ruthless killer named Widowmaker. And Tracer tries to stop him, and man, they have a great fight scene. It's a really nice fight scene, and I don't want to delve too much into it, but despite the fact that these characters get a lot of flack for being over-sexualized, most of their fighting stuff here, there's not a lot of sexy poses or, girl attacks. These chicks are just kicking the crap out of people and then blowing people away with their guns. I won't say there's not a couple of shots that could be claimed to be mildly cheesecake flavored, but for the most part, it's just two chicks just going to war, and I thought it was a lot of fun. It also shows that people still have a lot of hatred for Omnics, that there's still a lot of people out there who either don't trust them or would like to see them put down, and this sort of builds into that conflict. Touches on sort of the race relations that we have both in this country and worldwide, and touches on discrimination as a wonderfully illustrated topic, and I find that AI and humanity is a great way to flesh that out for a sci-fi series especially. Let's move on to Weeaboo Fighting Magic and Dragons. Holy cow. This one's my favorite, and I'm not gonna lie, it's because it's anime as hell. We get the story of two warring dragons, one of which slew his brother for great power, and of course, you know how this samurai story is going to end. This is Hanzo. This is Genji. Unbeknownst to Speed Racer, Racer X is actually his long-lost brother. Yeah, we know the tale. We know how it's gonna happen. We know. We just know. We know. And yeah, you're not wrong. That's exactly what happened. And so yeah, but what makes this one interesting is it's an established family that we get to see, and beyond that, they establish culture in here in exploring some of Japan, and you get to see first off an Omnic who is done up like an Oni with an Oni mask, which is just cool. You get to see some of the Japanese kind of Yakuza types, which is interesting. And different cultures and kind of how they're adapting in this society. It's a little subtle touch like that. Plus, you get this moment where Hanzo is looking at Genji and he says, "What have you become?" And his brother says, "I have made peace with what I am." And you get this kind of sense that it's almost like it's a taboo, maybe for Hanzo's clan or maybe for humanity in general, to have cybernetic augmentations. The characters that have them are usually really subtle about them. They don't show them off much. Characters like McCready, who keeps his hidden under a cloth, or Genji in this case, who sticks to the shadows and doesn't really want it known who he is. Torbjorn is the only one who's really overt about it, and that's because he's overt about everything. So yeah, there's that. And you even get characters like Junkrat, who just doesn't have one. He just kind of has a peg leg. So I don't know. I wonder if there's some more depth here that we're going to explore, or that we're going to see in later things. I hope so. Hero is the newest short, and while it may be a little overly simple, it does some things pretty beautifully. First off, it really details the fact that Agent 76, this Cyclops-looking, assault-wielding son of a gun, is secretly the former leader of Overwatch, as they show him hit the ground, and the girl says, "Who are you? I think you're one of those heroes," and he says, "Not anymore," and they cut pretty quickly to that shot of him on the poster, and she has to grab it and take it home. And it drives home the fact that the greatest have gone from up here to being common foot soldiers. But there's some really cool fights in it, and the Los Muertos with their neon body paint really make for a really cool visual, and it's a cool thing to see. I know it's never going to be in the game proper because the game is just arena combat, but man, I'd really love to explore some of these locations. So all that to say, these 5 shorts in a half an hour built lore on a game that I hadn't really wanted to play into a world I want to explore, into a world I'm curious about, with Omnics and a storied war that nearly tore the world apart, with groups like Overwatch and then the mysterious, shadowy, evil organizations and what their goals might be. I mean, so far, really, it seems like the only bad guys are either Genji or Hanzo, whichever one of them is on the bad side. I can't really tell. And then, Widowmaker and Reaper. I guess Roadhog and Junkrat, but they're kind of just criminals. The only 2 Australians, and they're both criminals. Oh man, it's just like Swaim said. Whew.
Good to have you with us, Aussie. Fosters, koalas, and a shrimp on the barbie. What a respectful depiction of the Australian people.
That being said, I rag on this game, but it has a remarkably diverse cast. I looked them all up, and we've got a Chinese character, 2 Japanese characters, one of which is a cyborg, a Korean character, a Brazilian character, an Indian character, an Egyptian character, a British character, the 2 Australians I already mentioned, an Omnic, and a battle automaton. They specify that they are different, that Bastion is not... moving on. And we've got a Russian, a German, a Swiss, 3 Americans, a Swedish, a French, and a gorilla. Yeah. It's worth noting, and this is my one gripe about the diverse cast that they've created, that 5 of the current 21 champions are white guys. So you got a 1 in 4 chance of rolling a white dude in McCready, 76, Junkrat, Roadhog, and Torbjorn. So there you go, there's 5. And that all of the ladies have to at least be a 9 out of a 10, or they just aren't cool. But then you got characters like Roadhog and Torbjorn, for God's sake. I mean, you got robots in this, and they can be friends with birds, but yet we can't have a fat lady or a lady who might have some scars, or... It's just frustrating. It feels like no matter where I go in media these days, if girls aren't gorgeous, then girls aren't important, and that's crap. I'd really like to see them diversify the female roster a little bit more there. You can do it. And with games like this and like League of Legends, who have such a gigantic cast, that's the stage to push diversity. Stop being so afraid, guys. You've got all these different characters. If they don't want to play those characters, then they won't. But give people the option to try something different. You're already doing a great job. Now push yourselves. At least I think you should. So what do I think about Overwatch? I think that they've done a remarkable job selling me an awesome cast of characters, and I would watch so many series about these guys. Sadly, though, Blizzard has done this before. With World of Warcraft, with StarCraft. I've watched so many cinematics that these guys have made, and then they just... That's it. That's it. And then you get the Warcraft movie. It's not... So, all these great stories that they've started, I'm afraid they're just never going to finish them. They'll just be that, awesome prologues to what might have been. They really make me want to play Overwatch, though. And I'll tell you this, if a story mode ever does appear, where we get some ending cinematics, where we get some closure, especially between Hanzo and Genji and their brotherly duel and back and forth, I might have to buy this game. So, if you haven't watched the cinematics already, go and check them out. They're worth checking out. If you haven't watched the extra credit video about Tracer, I recommend that too. It's a fantastic watch from an artistic perspective. If you haven't played Overwatch yet and you think it might be your kind of game, go support them, because it really does look like it's cool, and it really does look like it's worth your money. If it's not your sort of thing and you want to be a Shiitake Samurai, go play Battleborn, because it's kind of the same, but differenter, I guess. Anyway, yeah, thanks for sticking with us on Pen Made Mightier. Those are my thoughts on Overwatch, and we'll see you guys next week. And keep the suggestions coming in the comments. See ya now!
Pen made mightier without royalty.